Hey everyone, so today's video we are going to be talking about the most efficient heroes in the game when it comes to sinking resources into them. Now, when I say resources, we're talking about the two most valuable items in the game, in my opinion, and I think a lot of the community would also agree. And that is these Legendary Book of Masters, Epic Book of Masters, and Elite Book of Masters to an extent. As you see here, I have a lot of these books. These don't really matter to me anymore at this stage in my account, but for any new player coming in, these books are still going to be valuable. So just keep that in mind whenever you have different rares. There's plenty of elite heroes in the game that are useful. There are some specialists, but today we are talking about the elites, the epics, and the legendaries that are the most efficient with valuing these resources. These Book of Masters are the most valuable or the second most valuable item in the game. And then the other item that we're talking about are these Soul Arcanas. So the legendary ones here, the Hierarchy Soul Arcana is probably the most valuable item in the game, right above the Book of Masters. And then you also have one for epics, which is the Awakening Soul Arcana. So I'm going to talk about the heroes that, if you want to be the most efficient with these items, this is who you will use them on, because the heroes will scale from the early game all the way to end game. So without further ado, let's get into those heroes. The first, we're going to be going through the elites. Now, right now, I only have two of them that I think scale all the way to endgame. The first one is Radiant Pixie. This hero is just so good. Really, really good, and it continues to get better, even with the newer heroes that they're releasing. They just released a seasonal hero not too long ago that does very well with joint attacks, and Radiant Pixie actually has that within her special ability. So that's what I mean. She's already good, and with the new heroes that they're releasing, she's even gotten better. So she has a really good trait that gives your strongest hero an attack up buff. And if you have her ascended, if you get multiple copies of her, which you should definitely ascend her if you pull multiple copies, having multiple copies of a unit in this game, like to use to not ascend into one another, is not really useful. There are some rare exceptions. We're not going to talk about that in this video, but you should definitely try and get 6 total copies of Radiant Pixie so you can get her ascension, because it just adds that crit damage up to the team member with the highest attack. It's a fantastic trait. What makes her really good is she has counterattack, which is something that is useful in a bunch of different areas of the game. She pairs well with her special to go along with that counterattack, bringing in somebody with the highest attack, maximize some damage. And then she also has a relevant basic that has some kind of negative effect on it, which is defense down. So just a fantastic hero. I use her in my endgame teams right now for Gemini Dragon. So I'm farming stage 17 here with Radiant Pixie, as you see. So she scales all the way into the end game. You can use her in Doom Tower, Void Tower. You can even use her in Ash Magisteria. I'm sure there's some teams here that just do additional damage from all the counterattacks. I'm sure we can find a team. See, like even right here, Radiant Pixie scales all the way up into the endgame dungeons for Ash Magisteria, for Gemini Dragon. She's also even used in Rift of Chaos, which is one of the endgame contents as well. I use her here, so just a fantastic elite hero. Alright, so the only other elite that I have on here that you guys should invest in is one that I'm going to be investing in shortly is Joseph. So Joseph is a hero that you should invest in just from an arena perspective. He's okay in certain areas of dungeons, but he really doesn't scale to the end game. But he has a unique trait where he gets 20% additional speed on his ascension. So this allows you to outspeed a lot of arena teams, which is one of the hardest things to do for new players, is to win the speed race. You usually lose the speed race and then get nuked, but Joseph will allow you to basically get around that. I don't have a Joseph built, so I'm just going to show you what the purpose is in another hero because they're similar. So we're going to take a team like this, right, which uses a Winstrex, which I think a lot of newer players or mid-game players will see in Arena. She's a very fast hero, and she gives speed up and attack up to team members. But if you have a hero like Joseph, now Fire Melisa here, which is an epic, does a very similar thing to Joseph. She just adds a bunch of speed to herself. But if you're able to do that, you can use slower heroes. Now, I know this hero won't seem slow to people, but I'm guessing this hero can outspeed this hero. There is a spell in the game called Agile Leap, which allows you to take a hero's turn and then pass it to someone else's, especially if they're at the back of the turn order. So Fire Melisa in this instance will be Joseph. You just stack up a bunch of speed. You see that Fire Melisa has 256 speed, but she gives herself 45% additional speed at the start of the round, where Joseph will give himself 20%. So you can get him high enough to outspeed your opponent's team. Fire Melisa is the fastest hero in the game, so she is a better option, but because she's an epic, it takes more investment and investment of more valuable resources. So I think Joseph is good enough to get the job done for those newer to mid-game players to do something similar to what I'm about to show you. So what you would do is you would bring in your Joseph and you would bring in a very high damage dealing hero. And you see here how the Winstrex is faster than our nuker. If she were to go, everyone else would be faster than our nuker as well. But if you had Joseph and your nuker, you could then jump into that hero and it jumps the line, and then you go in and you basically nuke. So that's something that is really nice with Joseph, and why I think he is worth your rare books. All right, so those are the two elites that I have. I think they're extremely efficient with the resources that you can give them in those elite Book of the Masters, and that will not go to waste. So moving on to the epics, I have 4 epics that I think you should really invest in because they just span all across the game, and it's really never going to be a waste of resources for you. At least up to this point at the recording of this video, which is, January 5th, 2024. The first one on this list is Hoshi. So Hoshi is one of the heroes that you get early on. It's a free unit, and he is so good. He is really, really good. He has an amazing trait for a couple reasons. One, it makes him easy to build. He gives himself 30% crit rate already, so that means you only need 70% crit rate on him for him to crit every single attack. It's one of the hardest things for newer players to do is build enough stats on your heroes to make them efficient damage dealers. And whenever you have things built into the trait where you don't have to worry about certain stats, it goes a long way. On top of that, he gets his Awaken trait with only 2 more additional copies, which is really, really hard for people to usually do, is get a lot of copies. So needing only 2 additional, which gives you an upgrade to his trait, which is really good. It allows him to get stacks of attack up, so it increases his attack by up to 50% if you kill 5 people. with him. This is an amazing ascension to his trait. He is a great wave clearer. So in any kind of content like Void Tower, any kind of content like dungeons, so you can use him in the Tulpa dungeon, you can use him in Queen of Tides dungeon, you can use him in the Witch of the Wind dungeon to progress your account. He's an absolutely fantastic epic, and I think 100% worth those epic ascension potions, and then also the Book of the Masters. So just reiterating the places that you can use him. Tulpa as a wave clearer, even though he is a neutral affinity, if you want to go in and use somebody like Hitoshi, you can go in there and pick him out. He has a great aura, which also gives your team members attack in the dungeon, and then you can bring in a specialist to kill Tulpa. So what you're doing is you bring in heroes that do a lot of really strong damage against the boss, but they're not great at the waves. Maybe they're a single target, but then you have heroes like Hitoshi that can come in, completely take out the wave, give himself some stacks of crit, and then whenever he kills somebody, his ultimate ability is refreshed. So it's absolutely great. He's a great wave clearer. Fantastic hero to invest in because he just scales all the way up to the end game. So next on the epic list is actually 3 water heroes. The first one is Onamaros. This hero, when he was introduced, just made so many people happy because it allowed people to clear Void Tower Mythic, which is a really hard piece of content in the game, but it gives you a legendary crystal, so it's a guaranteed legendary hero out of this crystal. He is the key piece in clearing that content every single month. It resets every month. So this was a gift from the developers, to all the player base. He's a fantastic hero. He's going to make Void Tower normal, Void Tower hard, and Void Tower mythic really accomplishable for everybody. On top of that, he's also a really good PvP hero. So he's great in Arena. He's one of those heroes that you can use Joseph to jump into and just completely take over the game. He has this AoE freeze, and then every time someone misses their turn, he goes in and does joint attacks with them. It's an amazing hero. He's definitely worth the Ascensions as well. He needs 5 additional copies, which is a lot, but you should definitely use those Ascension pots on your Onamaros because he's just always going to be useful no matter what stage of the game you're in, early, mid, or late. The next hero is Bocce. So Bocce is one of the best tank killers in the game still to this day. In the higher ends of endgame, he's a little more limited just because some people have some great builds on tanks where he can't even one-shot them. But Bocce is one of those heroes that has a unique trait that allows him to ignore 100% of someone's defense. This is great for bosses. It's great for Arena. He's really good in the Ash Magisteria dungeon as you progress. He does a lot of damage there. He's one of the key pieces to beating Rift of Chaos Fire, which is, again, one of those endgame contents. He is the key piece in these teams. As you see here, he's basically everywhere. He is the main damage dealer for a lot of these teams. He scales great into the endgame. He's another one of those heroes that you can pair with Joseph in the arena to go in and just completely nuke down teams that you normally wouldn't be able to beat. So Bocce is the other one. And then last but not least for the epics is a hero that's been around for a long time, since the beginning of the game, and that's Nathalia. She is one of the best wave clears for Void Tower, any of the Void Tower settings, mainly normal and hard. She doesn't really do well in Mythic. That is a place specifically for Onamaros. But she's great at wave clearing, similar to Hitoshi. Specifically for Ash Magisteria, Hitoshi doesn't really do well there, but she can fill similar roles with Witch of the Wind, which we talked about with Hitoshi. and she's also a really solid early to mid-game nuker for Arena as well. She does need a little bit of support, especially early on, because I think a lot of people won't be able to build her in the right type of gear. She has a unique trait where if she has positive effects on her, she's able to target additional heroes or enemies. So I'll show you mine. So right now, my Nathalia is in a very special gear called Guard, and this grants her a shield at the beginning of the battle. Now, this is usually used for tank units, but because of her unique trait where for each positive effect on her, she targets an additional enemy. So all of her abilities are single targets, so single target and single target. But if she has an additional positive effect on her, all of her single target abilities will then target 2 enemies, and so on and so forth. So if she has 4 or more positive effects, she will AoE everyone, no matter what. All she needs, though, is 3 positive effects to deal damage to 4 enemies total. On top of that, though, this is where the guard set comes in. If she's affected by a positive effect, which that shield from the guard set counts as, she applies attack up and immune. So if you have the guard set, when it comes to her turn, she'll give herself attack up and immune. So that grants her those 3 positive effects. So then all of her abilities are doing AoE damage. Once you have her ascended, which is just the 2 additional copies similar to Hoshi, she's doing increased damage as well. So really great hero to use your Ascension potions on. Like I said, she's a great wave clearer in Ash Magisteria. She's one of the key pieces to clear Ash all the way up to stage 16, especially if you don't have a legendary hero that we're going to be talking about here shortly. But she's in most teams that don't include the legendary hero. So fantastic epic to maximize your efficiency of those 2 rare resources that we talked about in those Book of Masters and the Ascension potions. Okay, so now we're moving on to the legendaries. So, the legendary heroes. There is no light hero that I think that you need to invest in if you are early to mid-game. You can certainly do it because they are very strong heroes, but if you're trying to maximize on your efficiency for account progression, so the first dark legendary we're looking at is Doomweaver Valeria. She has a really cool trait where if she dies, she doesn't die. She goes into this air raid state, and she does damage to everybody at the end of the round, and it's based on her basic ability. But her basic ability will be cast on all enemies. So similar to like Nathalia, it says that it damages 1 enemy and it ignores 90% of their defense. But if she's dead and in this air raid mode, her basic ability will then attack all enemies, and it's ignoring 90% of their defense still. So Doomweaver is one of those heroes that you can build extremely squishy. You kind of want her to die, and then she just sits there. So you just build her extremely high attack, and she is just killing everyone at the end of the round as long as you have somebody still alive. So she pairs really well with tank heroes. She's really the only damage dealer that you would need to clear some kind of wave or adventure content, void tower content. And then she's great to put in to some teams, to help clear waves on the higher dungeon stages. She does AoE stuns, removes positive effects on everybody. Just a fantastic hero and well worth the legendary Book of Masters. The other one is Oderic. This guy is a PvE monster. He has great applications in all areas of the game. He has a really cool ultimate ability that allows him to steal people's attack. So not only does it make him stronger, but it also makes the person weaker that was dealt damage on this ultimate. So any kind of bosses, it will weaken them. And on top of that, he ignores 80% of their defense. He has this really cool trait, too, that allows him to not die as long as someone is alive that has the highest attack. That lasts for 3 rounds. So really strong hero. I wish I had him. He's one of the best heroes in the entire game, and he is well worth the legendary books. So moving on to the wood heroes is Guan Yu. This guy was just released. He was a seasonal hero. This is something that the game does every 3 months. They release a seasonal hero that is much easier to get from a shard pulling perspective. You have a 50-50 chance of getting him. Whenever they do these banners, you should pay attention to the channel. I can let you guys know when the next one's coming up here shortly. But he has just been fantastic. He has a really cool trait that allows him to outspeed any light and dark hero in the game. Whoever's the fastest light and dark hero on the opposing team, he gets their speed +1. This also counts for dungeons too. So there are a couple dark dungeons like Witch of the Wind and Gemini Dragon that allow him to be built very slow with high attack, but he'll still have high enough speed to outspeed them. Fantastic hero. He also does crazy amounts of damage to those said dungeons, Witch of the Wind and Gemini Dragon. For progression, he's really good in Void Tower still as well. Guild versus Environment, which is something that we haven't talked about, or also known as Ruin of the Gods. Guild Boss. He is a fantastic progression champ. Well worth those legendary Ascension pots. I know it stinks to use them on one hero, just because the benefits of them are so great with just stats for your heroes, but he is 100% worth sinking 5 of those into because he helps you almost everywhere in the entire game. Next, we have Hyun Woo. This is another one that he is just amazing everywhere. He's fantastic in Queen of Tides all the way up to the end game. He's fantastic in Rift of Chaos Water, especially if you don't have Ackerly, which is a key piece in that Rift. He's great in Guild versus Environment. He's fantastic in Guild Boss. He even has some minor applications in Arena, but overall, just a fantastic hero. He's similar to Hitoshi, where he has that increased crit rate already, so he's easier to build. Just puts out crazy amounts of damage, well worth your legendary Book of Masters and even the Ascensions. Although he is nice, he's one of those nicer heroes that really doesn't need his Awakened Ascension, which is at A5. But if you get him there, it's a nice boost to his damage. Okay, almost at the end here. Next is Elise. Elise is another one of those seasonal heroes, just like Guan Yu, where she is just fantastic everywhere. She has a little bit of limitation in comparison to Guan Yu because she has damage based on true damage, which is kind of irrelevant in certain aspects of the game. But other than that, the mid game to late game, she is really, really strong. And then on the end game, she still serves some purposes, in Rift of Chaos, in Gemini Dragon. So she will never be a waste of your resources, especially for early to mid game players. She will scale to the end game. Just be more of a specialist on the end game, but she's a specialist in the right areas. Moving on to fire. So I have one fire hero, and it is Rosalie. I've seen a lot of people talk about wanting to recall Rosalie or have all of the resources, taken away from her, just because they're at the point in their account where they need more of a specialist to clear some content. But Rosalie is the definition of efficiency. She covers 2 different elements. So she has a really cool trait where she switches in between being a fire hero and a water hero. So she's really strong against fire heroes and earth heroes. Whenever she's a fire element, she ignores 50% of the target's defense. And then whenever she's a water element, by attacking fire heroes, she does splash damage to everybody. So she turns into like an AoE hero. She's one of the best heroes to use in Void Tower. She can literally solo Ash Magisteria all the way up to stage 16. It's absolutely insane. People pair her with with Savannah, which is another legendary hero, to make the run faster, but she can literally do it by herself. And even with that, she scales all the way up to stage 19 in the endgame dungeon for Ash Magisteria. She's fantastic in Tulpa as well, all the way up until the endgame. Even on stage 20, I believe she's in a couple different teams. So here's one as well. So just a fantastic hero from an efficiency standpoint, right? Like I said, Void Tower, Tulpa, Ash Magisteria, Rift of Chaos, she's even used. I don't use her anymore just because Gavin is faster, but even if I didn't have Gavin, I could use Rosalie, and she would fit in nicely into the Rift of Chaos stuff. So, great hero. She screams efficiency. I know some people want their stuff back, but she is 100% worth it for progression. And then last but not least, we have Atara. So Atara, again, another seasonal hero. The developers do a really great job with the seasonal heroes. This is another example of it. She has a great trait where she transfers her defense. All of her defense, 20% of it goes into all of your heroes, so it makes all of them that much tankier. She pairs great with Doomweaver Valeria, if you are lucky enough to have her. And on top of that, she also removes negative effects from your team. She's 100% critical for endgame dungeon runs. She's absolutely critical for Rift of Chaos Fire. She's great in Guild versus Environment. She's great in Arena. Just all-around fantastic hero. Well worth the Ascension. It allows her removal of negative effects to go from a 2-round cooldown to 1-round cooldown. Sometimes this matters. You don't really need it in most content, but it's definitely not a bummer. Just a fantastic hero to put your Legendary Book of Masters into. So that is my list, guys. I am just talking about heroes that utilize those two items the best. There's so many great progression heroes that you want to level up, right? But they don't need those Ascension pots, or they don't need the Legendary Book of Masters. You know, you have heroes like Shane, who's just absolutely amazing for dungeon runs, but he doesn't need any pots. He doesn't need any books. I use Shane in a lot of content, but he does not have those extremely valuable resources. He's one of the best heroes in the game because of that. He is useful without any of those things. Same thing goes for Flarence, you know, another one of those fantastic heroes. Same thing goes for Badmar, another great progression hero, but he doesn't need those things to help your account. So just a little caveat there at the end. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this helps you out if you're one of those newer to mid-game players. And I will catch you on the next one. See ya.